I'm here with Anne Redstone, who until recently was a Hastings District Councillor, as she was in her third term. Kia ora, Anne, and thanks for joining me.
Kia ora, Andrew. Nice to be here.
Nice to be with you as well. Now, Anne, you've taken the rather sort of drastic step to step down as a councillor midway through your term. Can you tell us why you've decided to do this?
Well, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's. They call it Parkinson's disease. It's actually Parkinson's disorder. I was diagnosed just over a year ago, not too long after the last elections, which was a bit of a shame. But the reason I've decided to step down at this point of the triennium is because this way there'll be a by-election and somebody would go into my seat. If I waited until October, the seat wouldn't need to be filled, and I didn't think that was fair to the ratepayers. I'd prefer that somebody was representing them.
I'm sorry to hear of your diagnosis. It must have been a difficult decision to step down.
It was very difficult. I loved my job. I loved my job. Um, the thing is, my voice is impacted. That's probably the only symptom that really affects me at council is my voice sometimes gives up the ghost, and that's not conducive to council meetings at all, or having a voice around the table. So I decided because of that that I should step back.
So what are you going to do? Are you going to just be recovering and carrying on, or what are your plans now that you're off council? Are you still going to be involved in the community?
I have no doubt, Andrew. I've sort of been involved in the community for the 40 years I've been here. I started the Hawke's Bay Clean Sea Coalition 40 years ago, and following that, about 15 years ago, started WOW, which deals to coastal erosion. So,
Mm.
yeah, I don't think I can help myself, quite honestly.
Yeah. Now, as I said, you were in your third term as a councillor. What do you remember, firstly, from when you were first elected? Why did you decide to stand in the first place?
Well, I did stand on the coastal erosion
Yeah.
platform as such, but the first real memory of council was the Havelock North water contamination, which happened just after just before I was elected. So that was one of my first really big issue that came to the table. And then that was followed not too long past that with the East Face track.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we've actually had a very exciting 3 terms. Last term was COVID, and this term, Cyclone Gabriel. So, yeah, there's been some very big issues.
Yes, they have indeed. And now, obviously, climate change and coastal erosion that is, as you say, very dear to your heart. What do you think the strides have been made by the council under your term to sort of deal to this issue?
Climate change in particular.
Yeah, and
Uh,
coastal erosion. Yeah.
well, coastal erosion in my tenure in council, coastal erosion's been dealt with through the Coastal Hazards Committee. So that has been a good thing, I think, and is about to be adopted by the Hawke's Bay Regional Council. The Coastal Hazards Strategy is about to be adopted by the Regional Council. So hopefully that means that's sort of solved as much as we can do, and each individual issue that arises will be dealt with by Regional Council with an advisory group made up of probably the Coastal Hazards Committee that exists at the moment. So that's one thing. The other thing that was my portfolio was environmental portfolio. So there wasn't one before 4 years ago, and I picked up that one, and it's been really interesting. We have a strategic overview and we have an action plan in place now. So there's been quite a bit of work done in the last 4 years towards that, and also the Regional Climate Action Group has started as well, which I was also appointed to.
And
So
and
hopefully someone will take my place on that.
yes, hopefully. And so you're happy with the work you've done. What are some of the outstanding issues? I know climate change is a huge thing that's never going to be solved probably in our lifetime. But well, what do you think are still areas that need to be focused on by the councils?
Well, I think getting an action plan into place is vital. There are policy changes that could be made as far as conserving water goes, as far as increasing biodiversity goes. The tricky thing right at the beginning was that everyone is polarised by climate change. They find it a very difficult subject and nobody knows what to do. So I think it's small steps at a time, and accounting for our carbon emissions is the first one, and then mitigating those. So there's a whole raft of things you can do, but we just need to get doing them.
Now, obviously Cyclone Gabriel brought the issue of climate change and that into stark relief, and that in terms of where people should build and should be allowed to build, and that, do you think there's going to be fundamental change on that, and does there need to be?
Well, I think there already has been, but it's quite a tricky thing when you're working with fertile plains to know where to actually build, because we have the fertile plains that we don't want to build on. We've got the hills, which are a little bit at risk now, anywhere by a river or by the sea. So Cyclone Gabriel certainly opened our eyes up to where you could go, and I think intensification is probably going to be one of the answers.
No, I think you didn't attend the last council meeting because you had stepped down, but they had a really tricky proposal before them, which was that to whether or not they should uh, take a proposal that homeowners in the category 3 should help pay for the demolition costs of their homes. What do you think of that proposal, and how would you have voted on that?
I was actually there, Andrew. I was at
Okay,
the
sorry.
table
Yeah, yeah.
today. That's all right. For me, I would have probably, well, we're hoping to get an amendment into place, and I'd suggested it, and one of the other councillors proposed it. And that was that if anybody had been paid out by the insurance company for demolition costs, then it would be only fair for them to put them into the kitty, if you like. The ones that hadn't been paid out, that probably the ratepayers could share that cost, which wouldn't be huge actually. It's a very small cost across the whole ratepayer base. That was how I would have liked to have seen it go. Not sure how it would have ended up, but I think it's coming back on the table this month.
Yes, it is. And I mean, these are the difficult situations that council has to make. Obviously, you've got a ratepayer base that is under severe pressure anyway because of cost of living and that. How did you feel over your time making those difficult decisions?
Well, it's really hard because you're elected into the position by the people that you're trying to make life better for. And some things just have to be decided, and other things you think, well, did we have to spend that money or not? So I think we've got to a point where we're not having nice to haves, we're having must haves.
Yeah.
And yeah, thinking a lot harder because rates will increase further. There's $800 million to spend on roads and bridges still. So we're not going to have our rates go down no matter how hopeful we are, and we have to do our best with prudent spending.
Yeah, all the mayors across the region that I've spoken to believe that the system of local government, as far as rates and funding, the system is broken. Would you agree with that?
Well, yes, I think there should be more government input on some things just to take the pressure off the local governments, because local governments have a very basic, I guess, very basic need to do things such as roads and water and things like that, but everything else is a maybe. And I think, as I say, that government could have more input into some of the things that have happened, particularly in the last 7 years that I've been on board.
Yeah. Now, in those 7 years, what has been the highlight for you, or couple of highlights if you've got them?
Well, probably a couple of highlights have been Waiaroha would be my number one top of the list highlight. That's sits alone in the world as being probably one of the places in the world that looks to the mana of water and tells people the story of where water comes from. It's been fantastic for the children. I've watched them often down there going and pushing all the buttons and getting excited. The other thing that I'm real and also the water storage, the resilience for all our small communities in Frimley. But the other thing is the Cape Coast rock revetment walls. I've been very pleased about that because obviously that's what I stood for. And it seems to me that that's the very easiest way to give protection. And managed retreat, which was on the table before I started on council, is such a huge cost that it can never probably happen. So we have to look to making things stable on the coast. The other one that probably comes to mind is the CBD revitalisation, which has been fantastic. We've pretty much sorted out the East End and now we're going to move west. And when I say we, I have to get out of that habit.
Yes, indeed. Now, what are some of the things that you look back and you think the councils that you were on could have done differently?
I think one of the things that comes to mind is Plan Change 4, and I was probably a little bit alone on this one. Two or three of us that thought Plan Change 4 was a very, very good thing, but it's also allowed for some development on the east face of Te Mata.
Yeah.
I didn't want to see any development at all because personally I love that beautiful, whatever you would call it, part of the mountain. So I would have preferred to see no development, but we probably did the best possible thing we could for it, and that, you know, there'll be no further development once these 3 houses have been built.
Yeah, because there
I
has been quite a bit of, I know I'm speaking to Baden Barber, who says he gets a pain in his stomach every time he drives past there. That was quite a tense time with, you know, when they were looking at building the track up to Tomato Peak and that. What's your feeling on how the whole thing was handled?
At the time, I think it was handled quite well, really. But Baden's right, and I felt the same sickness in my stomach when you see such a pristine landscape, and also one of the most iconic landscapes in New Zealand being wrecked like that. It was horrific, and for the sake of money as well with the track. So I think it was handled well in the end, and we've remediated it, and it was a good way to spend money because it, you know, it changed everything. But as I say, I just don't want to see further development on that east escarpment. It's stunning.
Yeah. Now, council, by its nature, it's quite an interesting situation because you've got very different people coming together, and sometimes there can be disunity, sometimes there can be unity. How do you feel the council has gone under Mayor Sandra Hazelhurst's tenure, would you say?
I think it's been great, Andrew. Mayor Sandra is a very good mayor. She's got the hand on the button on everything. She's culturally aware. She's environmentally aware. I think she's a people person. And I think that the council's been fantastic, well, certainly up until when I left. And having diversity is a very good thing because that's a part of democracy. We all have to think differently, otherwise we become institutionalised.
Yeah. So you believe that the council has operated as a team and that there's unity in the council?
Well, in the last 2 terms, definitely. In this one, possibly things have changed a little bit. Different lot of people.
Why do you think they've changed?
I really can't say why
Yeah.
they have.
Yeah.
Personalities, I guess.
But are you optimistic about this region and the path that it's on?
Well, very optimistic. When I first started council, we were asked to look into a camera and tell everyone what we loved about Hastings. And I've got to be honest and say I couldn't come up with very much. I did love the Cape Coast, but the rest of it I couldn't think of anything. But now we could go all the way around the Hastings district and there's a lot to love. I think we've made a huge change in the last 7 years in particular. I also like the fact that we've elected Maori wards because that we were obviously one of the first to do that,
Yeah.
and that's given our tangata whenua a voice around the council table as well, although we always had a voice.
Yeah.
Baden was sitting beside me for the first 2 terms.
Yeah. And who would you like to see replace you? I know it's a democratic process, but have you shoulder tapped anyone to
I
do
have,
so? Yeah. Who have you
I've
shouldered?
shoulder tapped Hannah Monteperto Hendry, who is a young woman who lives in our community, but also comes from Clive. Her family come from Clive and Whakatū. She's a very switched on young woman. She's got a winery. They make wine. She's a sheet metal engineer by trade. She's on our volunteer fire brigade, and she used to run the Blackbridge refuse station. So
Okay.
I think she's very, very capable and has got a finger on the button on a whole lot of things. So yeah, I'd love to see her replace me. But as you say, it's an election process, so we'll see who stands first.
Yeah. Now, there has been talk that there might be other people following you, and there might be a few more by-elections this year. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know where that's at, Andrew. I've been out of the loop on that.
Okay. And now, just into what would you like to say to the people of the ratepayers of Hastings District who elected you for 3 terms?
Well, I'd like to say thank you to them all. It was an absolute privilege and an honour to serve. And I think that's one thing that everyone that gets to council has to keep in mind, that the people elected you and the people who you were working for. And that's what I've kept in mind for the 7 years I've been there. And I felt very honoured by the response when I said I was retiring, actually. So, yeah,
Well,
thanks to everybody.
yeah. And Redstone, thank you so much for your time and all the best in your journey and that and the future. And we wish you well.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.